How people remember you has very little to do with how much you speak. Some of the most unforgettable people in the world are not the loudest in the room, not the funniest, not the most social, and not the people constantly trying to impress others. In this video, you will discover why silence creates mystery, how calm behavior builds psychological presence, why people respect those who control their emotions, and how to make others think about you long after you leave the room. You will understand the hidden psychology behind presence, eye contact, emotional control, body language, and the energy that makes someone impossible to ignore without saying much. If you want to master quiet confidence and become unforgettable without forcing attention, then subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with someone who talks too much to be noticed, and write in the comments, silence is power. Now imagine entering a room without trying to dominate it. No loud jokes, no unnecessary stories, no desperate attempts to prove your value. Yet somehow, people notice you. They look at you longer. They listen when you finally speak. They remember your face after everyone else fades away. This is not magic. It is psychology. Most people think attention comes from volume. They believe the person who speaks the most controls the room. But reality works differently. The loudest person often disappears from memory first because they leave no mystery behind. Human beings are naturally drawn toward what they cannot fully read. When someone talks endlessly, reveals everything instantly, and constantly seeks approval, the mind stops being curious. But the quiet person creates unanswered questions, and unanswered questions stay in the mind much longer than loud noise ever will. People who talk too much usually do it for one hidden reason: anxiety. They fear silence because silence forces them to feel exposed, so they fill every moment with words. They explain too much, laugh too hard, react too quickly. They believe communication creates connection, but excessive communication often destroys presence. Why? Because when you constantly talk, people stop valuing your words. Scarcity creates value. The same principle exists everywhere in life. Rare things feel important. Endless things feel ordinary. The unforgettable person understands this deeply. They do not rush to respond. They are comfortable with pauses. They allow silence to exist without panicking, and this alone changes how others perceive them. Because calmness under silence signals emotional control. Emotional control signals strength. Most people cannot control themselves emotionally, so when they meet someone who can, they instinctively respect them without even understanding why. Look carefully at people who naturally attract attention. Truly powerful people rarely over-explain themselves. They do not chase validation every second. They are not in a hurry to prove intelligence. They speak with precision instead of excess. Every sentence feels intentional, and because their words are limited, people listen carefully when they finally decide to speak. This does not mean becoming cold or antisocial. Many people misunderstand silence and turn themselves into emotionally distant statues. That is not presence. That is fear disguised as mystery. Real silent confidence is warm but controlled, calm but observant, relaxed but aware. You do not ignore people, you simply stop performing for them. One of the fastest ways to become unforgettable is learning the power of observation. Most people enter conversations focused entirely on themselves. What should I say next? How do I look? Am I interesting enough? But unforgettable people reverse this process. They observe more than they react. They study body language, tone changes, emotional shifts, tiny details others miss. This makes people feel deeply seen around them, and human beings never forget those who truly make them feel understood. There is also another psychological truth most people ignore. Emotional stability is attractive, not only romantically, but socially and professionally. Think about it carefully. Who feels more powerful? The person reacting emotionally to everything, or the person remaining composed under pressure? The calm individual instantly creates psychological gravity. Others begin orbiting their energy because stability feels rare in a chaotic world. And here is where many people fail. They confuse silence with weakness because society constantly rewards visibility. Social media teaches people to broadcast every thought, every emotion, every achievement. But oversharing destroys psychological depth. When everyone knows everything about you instantly, there is nothing left to discover. Mystery disappears. Anticipation disappears, curiosity disappears. And curiosity is one of the strongest forces behind memorability. The truth is that people become obsessed with what they cannot completely predict. That is why emotional self control becomes so powerful. When your reactions are calm and measured, others cannot easily manipulate you or fully understand your internal world. This creates intrigue, not fake manipulation, not games, genuine emotional discipline. Another thing unforgettable people master is eye contact. Most people either avoid eye contact because of insecurity or overdo it to appear dominant. But balanced eye contact communicates something much deeper: certainty. When you look at someone calmly without rushing or fidgeting, it tells them you are comfortable with yourself. And self comfort is contagious. People constantly reveal insecurity through nervous movements, touching the face repeatedly, talking too fast, interrupting silence immediately, looking around while speaking, smiling excessively to gain approval. These behaviors seem small, but psychologically they communicate hidden neediness. Unforgettable people move differently. Their movements are slower, more intentional. Their energy says, I do not need to force attention. Ironically, this is exactly why attention comes naturally to them. One of the strongest forms of presence is learning when not to speak. Most arguments become ugly because people cannot tolerate being misunderstood for even 5 seconds. So they react emotionally, defend themselves instantly, and destroy their composure. But powerful people understand timing. Sometimes silence protects your dignity more than explanation ever could. Sometimes walking away says more than another hour of defending yourself. And this is difficult because human beings crave validation naturally. We want people to understand us, approve of us, and admire us. But the moment your self-worth depends on external approval, your presence weakens. You begin chasing reactions instead of controlling your energy. You become emotionally available to everyone, and people unconsciously stop respecting boundaries you do not protect yourself. The unforgettable person does not protect your inhale. They attract it through internal stability, through emotional discipline, through calm observation, through selective speech, through the ability to remain grounded while everyone else reacts emotionally around them. This is why confidence is often silent. Insecurity is loud because it constantly needs confirmation. Confident people do not feel the same urgency to prove themselves. They already know their value internally. That inner certainty changes posture, tone, facial expressions, and even the rhythm of speech. Others sense it immediately, even if they cannot explain it logically. Have you ever noticed how some people enter a room and instantly shift the atmosphere without saying much? That is presence. And presence cannot be faked for long because it comes from internal alignment. If someone acts mysterious while secretly craving approval, eventually the mask breaks. Real, unforgettable energy comes from becoming emotionally independent enough to stop performing constantly for acceptance. Another important truth is this: listening is more memorable than talking. People love talking about themselves because it gives them emotional release. If you genuinely listen with focus and curiosity, people associate your presence with emotional comfort. Most individuals spend conversations waiting for their turn to speak. Very few actually listen deeply. When someone finally experiences true attention from another person, they remember it for a very long time. But listening does not mean agreeing with everyone. Silent confidence is not passive weakness. Unforgettable people still have boundaries. They simply express them calmly instead of emotionally exploding. Their emotional reactions are controlled, which makes their words carry more weight. When someone rarely raises their voice but suddenly speaks firmly, everyone notices immediately because their emotional discipline created contrast. And here's something most people never realize: over explaining destroys authority. The more you desperately explain yourself, the more people sense uncertainty. Powerful communication is often shorter than emotional communication. Short, calm, direct responses create more impact than endless justification. This is why some people can say one sentence and completely control the emotional direction of a conversation, while others talk for 20 minutes and leave no impact at all. The modern world trains people to fear stillness, constant scrolling, endless stimulation, nonstop notifications. People lose the ability to simply exist calmly. but stillness creates psychological sharpness. When you stop reacting impulsively to every emotion and every distraction, your mind becomes clearer, your words become stronger, your presence becomes heavier. Others begin feeling your energy before you say. And perhaps the deepest reason quiet people become unforgettable is because silence forces authenticity. When you are not constantly performing through words, people pay attention to your behavior instead. Your consistency, your emotional control, your reactions under pressure, your honesty, your boundaries. Eventually, people trust actions more than language because actions reveal character, while words often hide it. The dangerous mistake is pretending to be mysterious while secretly hoping everyone notices you. People detect forced behavior quickly. Real quiet power is not about manipulating perception. It is about becoming comfortable enough with yourself that you no longer need constant external noise to feel important. That once that shift happens internally, your external presence changes automatically. People start noticing the calmness in your eyes, the patience in your speech, the discipline in your reactions, the absence of desperation in your energy. And in a world addicted to attention seeking behavior, someone who remains centered and controlled instantly becomes rare. Rare things become memorable. Rare energy becomes unforgettable. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to understand that real power is not always loud. And write in the comments, presence speaks louder than words. The moment you stop trying to impress everyone, something strange begins to happen. People start paying closer attention to you, not because you became louder, but because your energy stopped, feeling desperate. Most individuals unknowingly push people away because they constantly seek reactions. They want approval immediately. They want validation instantly. They want everyone to notice them now. But urgency creates pressure, and pressure destroys attraction. Unforgettable people move differently. They do not rush emotional connections. They allow people to discover them slowly. This is important because the human brain values what requires emotional investment. When everything about you is instantly available, your presence becomes temporary entertainment instead of lasting impact. But when people gradually uncover your personality, your values, your intelligence, and your emotional depth over time, they become psychologically attached to the experience of discovering you. This is why restraint is powerful, not suppression. Restraint. There is a difference. Suppression comes from fear. Restraint comes from control. Weak people react emotionally to every situation because they are controlled by impulses. Strong people choose their reactions carefully because they understand that emotional discipline creates respect. Imagine two people receiving criticism. The first becomes defensive instantly, raises their voice, explains themselves emotionally, and tries desperately to prove they are right. The second remains calm, listens carefully, pauses before responding, and answers with clarity instead of emotional chaos. Which person feels more powerful? Which one feels more unforgettable? Calmness under pressure always creates stronger psychological impact than emotional noise ever will. And this calmness cannot be achieved through acting alone. It requires internal work. Many people try to appear mysterious externally, while internally they are drowning in insecurity. Eventually, this contradiction reveals itself. Real presence begins when you stop measuring your worth through others, people's reactions. The more dependent you are on validation, the more unstable your behavior becomes. One compliment makes you happy. One criticism destroys your confidence. One ignored message ruins your mood. This emotional dependency weakens presence because your energy becomes reactive instead of grounded. Unforgettable people build an internal center. Their emotional state is not controlled by every external opinion. This does not mean they feel nothing. It means they developed emotional mastery instead of emotional slavery. And emotional mastery is rare because most people spend their lives escaping discomfort instead of learning how to control themselves within discomfort. One of the clearest signs of quiet confidence is comfort with silence during conversations. Most people panic during pauses. They immediately fill empty space with random words because silence feels threatening to insecure minds. But silence is not your enemy. Silence reveals who isn't. comfortable with themselves, and who desperately needs distraction. When you can sit calmly in silence without forcing conversation, people subconsciously perceive emotional strength in you. There is also incredible power in unpredictability. Predictable people become invisible because everyone already knows how they will react. They complain the same way, argue the same way, seek attention the same way. But emotionally disciplined people are harder to predict because they do not react impulsively. They think before responding. They observe before judging. They choose timing carefully. This creates psychological intrigue because others cannot easily control or manipulate them. And perhaps this is one of the biggest reasons silence creates power. It protects your emotional leverage. The more information you constantly reveal, the easier it becomes for others to read, predict, and emotionally influence you. This is why emotionally intelligent people do not expose every thought immediately. They process internally first. They understand that not every emotion deserves expression, and not every opinion deserves immediate announcement. Modern culture glorifies exposure. People are encouraged to document every feeling, every conflict, every achievement, every private moment. But constant exposure weakens emotional depth. When your entire life becomes public performance, your identity slowly turns into entertainment for others instead of something meaningful and grounded. Quiet people often maintain stronger identities because they preserve parts of themselves privately. Privacy creates inner stability. Oversharing often creates emotional fragmentation. Another reason unforgettable people speak less is because they understand the value of attention. Attention is psychological currency. Wherever your attention goes, your emotional energy follows. Weak individuals give attention to everything, every argument, every insult, every distraction, every opinion online. They become mentally exhausted because they never protect their focus. But strong individuals are selective. They understand that reacting to everything destroys clarity. The same applies socially. You do not need to respond to every provocation. You do not need to explain yourself to every misunderstanding. You do not need to fight for attention in every room. Sometimes, the strongest move is emotional detachment, not coldness, not arrogance, simply the wisdom to recognize what deserves your energy and what does not. This mindset changes relationships completely. People begin respecting your boundaries because they sense you respect yourself. Many individuals lose their presence because they become too available emotionally, always texting first, always chasing conversations, always trying to maintain connections that clearly lack mutual effort. But unforgettable people understand reciprocity. They stop forcing energy where it is not naturally returned. This is difficult because loneliness scares most people. Many stay loud and overactive socially because silence forces them to face themselves. Constant talking becomes emotional escape. Constant stimulation becomes psychological anesthesia. But the person who learns to enjoy solitude develops something extremely dangerous: independence from external validation. Once you become emotionally comfortable alone, people can no longer easily manipulate you through attention or rejection. You stop fearing being ignored, and strangely, this is often when people start noticing you the most, because non-neediness changes energy completely. People feel when someone is trying to extract validation from them. And they also feel when someone is internally fulfilled enough not to beg for emotional approval. The truth is that unforgettable presence is less about techniques and more about identity. Techniques without inner transformation feel fake quickly. You can imitate slow speech, controlled body language, or mysterious silence for a short time. But if internally you are desperate for validation, your eyes, reactions, and emotional behavior will eventually expose the truth. Real transformation happens when you genuinely become less dependent on external noise, when you no longer feel the need to constantly prove intelligence, attractiveness, success, or importance. Ironically, this is exactly when these qualities become more visible naturally, because authenticity creates magnetic energy, while performance creates tension. And here is another uncomfortable truth. Many people talk too much because they fear invisibility. They believe silence makes them irrelevant. But reality is often the opposite. Excessive talking usually makes people blend together because everyone is competing for attention the same way. Quiet confidence stands out precisely because it is uncommon. In a noisy world, calmness becomes unforgettable. There is a reason storms attract attention, but mountains earn respect. Storms are loud, dramatic, emotional, and impossible to ignore for a moment, but mountains remain unmoved, silent, stable, immovable. Most people live like storms, constant emotional reactions, constant explanations, constant need for recognition. But unforgettable people develop the energy of mountains. Their stability changes the emotional atmosphere around them without effort. When you become emotionally stable, people start trusting your presence differently. Your words carry more weight because they are not wasted constantly. Your reactions feel more meaningful because they are controlled. Even your silence begins communicating confidence. And this is important because human beings listen more carefully to people who do not speak endlessly. Scarcity increases value psychologically. The less available something is, the more attention people give it. This is why some individuals can say one sentence and completely shift a room, while others speak for an hour and leave no emotional trace. It is not about quantity. It is about emotional weight behind communication. Words become powerful when they come from clarity instead of insecurity. One of the hidden habits of unforgettable people is that they do not rush intimacy. Most individuals reveal themselves too quickly because they want connection immediately. They tell strangers their deepest problems. They overshare emotions before trust is built. They expose insecurities, hoping vulnerability will force closeness. But forced closeness usually creates emotional discomfort instead of genuine connection. Strong presence understands pacing. Trust is built gradually. Respect is built gradually. Emotional depth is revealed gradually. This controlled unfolding keeps relationships psychologically engaging because people naturally value what takes time to understand. Fast emotional exposure often creates temporary attention, but slow emotional depth creates lasting memory. And notice something else about calm individuals. They rarely seek the spotlight directly. Desperate attention seeking weakens presence because it reveals hidden insecurity. The person constantly trying to appear important often feels unimportant internally. Truly grounded people do not obsess over being noticed because they already possess internal self respect. Their behavior comes from fullness instead of emotional hunger. This changes body language dramatically. Insecure people often move with restless energy. They interrupt, overreact, force laughter, speak too fast, seek reassurance constantly. But emotionally centered people move with patience. Their expressions are controlled, their gestures are intentional. They are not rushing to earn acceptance every second. And because of this, others unconsciously perceive them as more valuable. The human mind is deeply affected by emotional contrast. When someone reacts intensely all the time, eventually nothing about them feels special anymore. But when a calm person suddenly expresses emotion, everyone notices instantly because restraint created impact. This is why controlled people often appear more powerful emotionally than expressive people. Their emotions feel deliberate instead of chaotic. Another powerful trait of unforgettable individuals is selective honesty. Many people misunderstand authenticity. They think authenticity means expressing every thought immediately. But mature authenticity includes wisdom. Not every truth requires immediate expression. Not every opinion improves a situation. Emotionally intelligent people understand timing, context, and emotional consequence. They know when silence protects peace better than unnecessary honesty ever could. This becomes especially important during conflict. Weak individuals argue to win emotionally. Strong individuals communicate to preserve clarity. One seeks domination, the other seeks understanding. This difference completely transforms how others remember you after difficult moments. People rarely forget the person who nagging, while everyone else lost control. And perhaps one of the most attractive forms of power is emotional non-reactivity. Imagine someone insults you, hoping for an emotional explosion, but instead you remain calm, almost unaffected. Immediately, the psychological dynamic changes. Why? Because emotional control signals inner security. People lose power over you when they cannot control your reactions. This does not mean becoming emotionless. Emotionlessness is not strength. Emotional mastery is strength. Suppressing feelings eventually creates coldness and internal emptiness. But understanding your emotions without becoming enslaved by them creates stability. You feel deeply without losing control completely. That balance is rare. And rarity creates memorability. People also underestimate the power of consistency. Many individuals create strong first impressions but weak long term impressions because their personality changes constantly depending on who they are around. They adapt desperately to gain approval. Different face for different groups, different opinions for different environments. But unforgettable people possess identity stability. Their core energy remains recognizable everywhere. This consistency creates trust because others know what emotional reality they are dealing with. The world today rewards performance more than character. People carefully construct online personalities designed to attract validation. But performance eventually becomes exhausting because maintaining false energy requires constant effort. Real presence feels effortless because it comes from alignment between inner identity and outer behavior. No performance needed, no mask constantly slipping. This is why some people feel peaceful to be around. They are not trying to manipulate perception every second. They are comfortable enough with themselves to exist naturally, and natural confidence affects people more deeply than rehearsed charisma ever will. Many people spend years trying to become interesting while ignoring something more important, becoming emotionally grounded. Emotional grounding creates depth. Depth creates presence. Presence creates memorability. Someone with perfect jokes and endless stories may entertain people briefly, but someone with emotional stability changes how people feel internally. And people always remember feelings longer than words. They remember how calm you remained under pressure, how carefully you listened, how your presence felt safe instead of chaotic, how your confidence did not require constant display, how your silence never felt awkward because it carried certainty instead of insecurity. This is why becoming unforgettable is not about learning tricks. It is about removing desperation, removing emotional dependency, removing the compulsive need to constantly prove your worth. Once these disappear, your natural presence becomes visible automatically. Because the truth is, people can sense when someone is trying too hard, and they can also sense when someone no longer needs to try so hard at all. That second energy is rare, and rare people are never forgotten. At the end of everything, becoming unforgettable is not really about controlling other people's attention. It is about controlling yourself. Because once you master yourself, your presence changes automatically. Your voice becomes calmer, your reactions become slower, your eyes become steadier, your energy stops chasing and starts attracting. Most people spend their lives trying to be seen while hiding from themselves at the same time. They fear silence because silence exposes insecurity. They fear solitude because solitude removes distraction. They fear being forgotten because their identity depends too heavily on external attention. But the moment you stop running from yourself, something powerful happens. You stop needing constant noise to feel important, and that inner calm becomes visible to everyone around you. You begin understanding that not every battle deserves your reaction, not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your energy. This emotional selectiveness is not arrogance, it is maturity. It is self respect. It is the realization that your attention is one of the most valuable things you own. And once people feel that grounded energy from you, they remember you differently. Not because you entertained them loudly, not because you demanded attention, not because you forced your way into their minds, but because your presence felt rare. In a world full of people trying desperately to be noticed, the calm person becomes unforgettable. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes magnetic. In a world filled with emotional chaos, stability feels powerful. And maybe that is the real secret behind unforgettable people. They do not try to control every room, they control themselves within every room. They are not obsessed with appearing powerful. They become peaceful enough internally that power naturally appears through their behavior. And when you reach that point, people feel it immediately. They notice the confidence that does not beg. They notice the calmness that does not crack under pressure. They notice the discipline behind your words, your movements, your silence. They may not fully understand why they remember you, but they will. Remember this carefully. Loud attention fades quickly, but deep presence stays in the mind for years. So stop trying to impress everyone. Stop over-explaining your worth. Stop forcing connections that require you to abandon your dignity. The less desperate you become for validation, the stronger your presence grows. And one day, without forcing anything, you will walk away from conversations, rooms, relationships, and moments, and people will still think about you long after you are gone. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. And write in the comments, silence creates presence. Your comment may inspire someone else to stop chasing attention and start building real inner power.